Award show rehearsals operate on a logic that has almost nothing in common with the logic of a live performance. The cameras are not recording. The audience is not present. The lighting is partially set. The sound is being tested. The production is in the process of becoming what it will be on the night that actually matters. And everyone in the building understands that what is happening in the rehearsal is not the thing itself. It is the preparation for the thing. Which means that the performers who move through these spaces during rehearsal hours are, almost universally, doing a version of their material rather than the material. Marking the positions, running the timing, giving the production team what they need to do their jobs, without expending the full energy that live performance requires, and that can only be given in the moment when everything is actually at stake. Katt Williams was given 30 seconds. The rehearsal schedule for the event was tight. Award show schedules are always tight, structured around the need to move a large number of performers and presenters through a space that can only physically hold the production, one setup at a time, managed by a production team whose job is to extract the necessary information from each slot, without allowing any single slot to expand into the time that the next slot requires. 30 seconds was what the schedule allowed. 30 seconds was what the production team needed. And 30 seconds, for the purposes of a rehearsal slot on an award show schedule, is not an insult. It is simply the number. What happened in those 30 seconds in a rehearsal room with no audience, no recording equipment directed at the performance, no particular reason for a performer to give what a live show requires, is what the production team members who were present in that room have described consistently as something they were not prepared for and have not entirely found the right words for since. The 30 seconds ran. The production assistant marked the completion. The technical team had what they needed. The position confirmed, the cue established, the slot fulfilled. By any measure of what a rehearsal slot is designed to accomplish, the 30 seconds were complete. What happened in the room after the 30 seconds is harder to describe. Not dramatic, nothing dramatic happened. No one applauded in an empty rehearsal hall. No one broke from their professional role to comment on what they had just observed. The production continued in the way productions continue. The next item on the schedule, the next setup, the next requirement of a rehearsal day that had many more slots to get through before it was done. But the production assistant who had been timing the slot, and the sound technician who had been checking levels, and the lighting board operator who had been making adjustments during the 30 seconds, have each, independently and in different conversations over the years that followed, described a specific quality in the room immediately after. Not silence exactly, because the production was still moving and the building was still active, but a particular kind of pause in the people who had been present, a brief suspension of the forward motion that rehearsal days require, that lasted only a few seconds, but was long enough for each of them to register that what they had just witnessed was not what they had been expecting. What they had been expecting was 30 seconds of a performer giving a production team what a production team needs from a rehearsal slot. What they got was 30 seconds of a performer treating an empty house like a full one. 30 seconds of someone for whom the commitment to the work was apparently not contingent on whether there was anyone in the room to see it. The production people who run award show rehearsals have seen a great many performers move through rehearsal slots. They have seen major names who arrive at rehearsal as a contractual obligation, do enough to satisfy the production team's technical requirements, and leave. They have seen performers who use the rehearsal slot as a genuine practice opportunity, working through material at something less than full performance energy to test the technical conditions before the night that matters. They have seen performers who are so experienced with the format, that the rehearsal itself is a kind of disappearing act, present enough to give the cameras and lights what they need, absent enough to preserve what the actual performance will require. What all of these approaches have in common is that they are calibrated to the absence of an audience. The logic of the calibration is correct. A live performance with no audience is not a live performance. The energy that performance generates and requires is generated by the people in the room. Without them, the most technically perfect execution of any piece of material is still only a technical exercise. The form requires the audience the way the audience requires the performer. In the absence of one, the other is not performing. They are rehearsing. And rehearsing, for almost everyone, means less than the thing itself. Katt Williams, in that rehearsal slot, did not appear to be calibrating for the absence of an audience. The production assistant who was timing the slot has described what happened in those 30 seconds as the kind of thing you know you're watching while you're watching it, rather than only understanding afterward. Not because of what the material was. The production slot wasn't about the material, and the material wasn't what she was tracking. Because of the quality of the attention the performer was bringing to those 30 seconds in an empty room at a rehearsal that nobody was going to remember. The same attention, the same internal energy, the same quality of presence that a performer brings when 5,000 people are in the seats, brought to an empty house with a clipboard and a timer. The question of why a performer of Katt Williams's experience would bring full performance energy to a 30-second rehearsal slot in an empty room, when the professional norm, the expected behavior, the rational allocation of a performer's resources would suggest something far more abbreviated, is not one that has a simple answer. But it points towards something that his career, across its full arc, consistently demonstrated: a specific relationship between the work and the condition under which the work is done. For most performers, the audience is one of the conditions of performance. Without the audience, the performance is incomplete, suspended like a sentence without its conclusion. The audience is not incidental to what a live performance is. It is constitutive of it. Which means that, in the absence of the audience, the full performance energy that the complete experience requires is simply not appropriate to the situation. The rehearsal is a different kind of activity than the performance, and treating them identically is not a mark of commitment. It's a failure to recognize what each requires. For some performers, the audience is not one of the conditions of performance. It is a witness to a process that would happen with or without them. The material is what it is because it has been built to be what it is. And it is what it is in the rehearsal as completely as it is what it is on the night. The audience doesn't complete the performance. The performance is already complete, and the audience is given the opportunity to be present while it is happening. 30 seconds in an empty room, treated as though the seats were full and the cameras were on and everything was at stake. Because for a performer who understands the work that way, everything is always at stake. Not because of who is watching, because of what the work is. That's the part of the story most people never heard. Not the award show itself, not whatever happened when the cameras were actually rolling and the audience was in the seats. A rehearsal slot, a timer, an empty house, and 30 seconds that nobody who was in the room has forgotten, because the performer used them as though they were the only 30 seconds that would ever exist.